believe I was an infant. Did that happen? I don't think of the date on that. Do you have that off the top of your head? No, it was in the 70s. Yeah, so that predated me a little bit. Yeah, on that. Okay, so don't drink the Kool-Aid. Action points here. And pretty much chapter 10 is a great interaction. Great interaction here. It leads up to basically what we have here is Mr. Mike is going back and he's getting to the bottom of some stuff. And in his job, for those of you visiting with us or haven't been here, Mr. Mike works at a copy it's a huge business, but his job basically is he goes into different churches and he works on the copy machines and things like that, and that opens up a world of opportunity for him to check these questions and answers that he's corresponding with Randall, who works with him. And so Mr. Mike and Randall going through, and really what Mr. Mike is working on right now is he is trying to figure out where the Baptist church started, and especially getting into the next couple of chapters, the sinner's prayer, trying to figure out what's going on in the sinner's prayer. All right, so continue memorizing the note card from the stack, and we've got those note cards in advance. We're up through a couple of chapters ahead, but if you need those, just get with me after class and we can get those for you. But we'll start handing those back out here in a week or two. And it talks about comparing John 3:16 with John 3:1-5. And we got into that a little bit last week as far as just the word believe. And if you just take any word, any verse out of context, you can do a whole lot with that. You can prove a whole lot. But it's not about that. It's about taking the whole. And this synecdoche, which is just a fancy word, it's just two Greek words put together. But anyways, it's a figure of speech when you're talking about one part of a whole. Example there, bake a cake. The word bake in this example part that is used for the whole process. If I say I'm baking a cake, I talked last week, if you just dump a cake mix into a pan and you don't add any eggs or any oil in that, you're just going to get a pile of burnt crumbs, I guess. It's not going to work out well. So when you say bake a cake, it implies other things. John 3:16, because if you take it in context, okay, of being born of the water and the Spirit, okay, and not just pulling out that word believe and saying, oh, all you got to do is believe it, and that's it. You're golden. We talked last week. A lot of translations, the way they translate that is, the American Standard has this. American Standard 1901 says, those who believe should be saved. Okay? If you're running out of gas, you should get gas. Does everybody understand that? Okay? Does that mean you got gas? No. But you should get it. Okay? So if you have this concept, you should. I work every month. And on the 20th, I should get paid. Okay? Does that mean I'm getting paid every day? Kind of, but you don't see it. And now you usually, most people see it at the end of the month. It's just magically in that bank account. But you should get paid. Now, am I getting paid every time? No, but I should at the end of the month for my month's work. We all understand that. But for some reason, and everybody understands this concept, but then when you pull out this verse, and people love John 3:16, they hold it up on the signs at the football games and all of this, but no one knows the context of the water and the Spirit. And so that gets into the next action point here. Number 3, application. Verse 16 says, whosoever believes in him should not perish, but should have everlasting life. What does this believe it represent? So what all does that represent? What all Acts does in just believing, what all does that represent? Is it just belief, or does it include other actions? It includes that you are obeying in that belief. You believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Based on that belief, you're not afraid to not just to confess Him and say Jesus Christ is the Son of God and that He died for my sins. You're not just confessing, but because you believe on Him, it makes no sense to believe who Jesus is and understand He's the Son of God and then to not repent of sins. So repent is also included there. James tells us, and it's already been referred to in the book, even the demons, they believe, and they don't just believe, but they know and understand God's power. They believe and do what? They tremble. So, well, that's even a step further. So, not only that, but then also obedience to the gospel, and not just as a word, but as a word to call Okay, so again, chapter 10, name of chapter 10, don't drink the Kool-Aid. So he's getting ready to do this, and he's reminded, don't drink the Kool-Aid, because he goes and he's talking to this, I can't remember everything about the Lutheran preacher, minister, I forget what he's called. There we go. Lutheran reverend. All right. So he is a reverend, and he's talking with him, and I get this feeling. I've been to a couple of college professors' offices that have this vibe to it. Okay, he's got his pipe in there that he's kind of puffing on, and I forget how he's dressed, but he's got some secular books here and some religious books here. Just seems like a really laid back guy. And anyways, and Mr. Mike goes in, he's like, "Could I ask you a couple of questions?" And he says, "Yeah, sure." And so they start talking, and he doesn't get, the reverend here, the Lutheran reverend, doesn't get worked up really. He kind of stays cool, stays calm, and then has this discussion with Mike. All right, so number one, what are some of the many reasons that some think the Church of Christ is a cult? Let's back up really far, okay, into the first century, like those first century doctors Matt was talking about. Why did people think that the church was a cult in the first century? What are some of the phrases that were thrown around? Drink what? Drink the blood and eat the flesh? Yeah, people are like, whoa, those people, I don't know about that. And they didn't realize that it wasn't literal, and so it's a cult, okay? And what was it that the Reverend said? If they say they're what? They say they're the only ones going to heaven, then it's usually what? It's usually a cult. If they've got information that nobody else has, that usually means that it's a cult, that they're secluded from everyone else. Okay? And so, as the popular phrase is that we've heard so many times in this class up to this point, Church of Christ, I think they're the only ones going to heaven. And so, because of that, the cult there is labeled. Consider the Lutheran. Any questions or any more comments on that?
I was going to say that one of the ways that we know a cult too is they start out with a lot of love and concern, and they give a lot of attention to this person that they're trying to win to their cause. And if we're doing what Jesus told us to do, that in itself might get someone who doesn't understand. Why are we acting the way we do? Why do we love people the way we do? Why do we love each other the way we do? We could be called a cult, or we could be called the true Church of Christ.
And that goes into just this basic relationship ministry that Randall has. Randall doesn't lose his cool in the next chapter that we'll talk about while they're at the diner. Randall goes, when we talked about last week, and apologizes to Mr. Mike, but it's really Mike that kind of flew off the handle and lost his cool. But he's going out to show him that love, which some may mistake, as Ms. Linda said, for a cult. John chapter 15. All right, I am the vine, the branches. John chapter 15. Verse 5. That's a double key there. It's kept looking at 55. It's not in there. All right, John 15, start at verse 1. And this is the American Standard 1901. I am the true vine, my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he taketh it away, and every branch that beareth fruit, he cleanseth it, so it can bear more fruit. Already you are clean because of the word that I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine. We all understand this. Verse 5. I am the vine, you are the branches. He that abides in me and I in him, the same beareth much fruit. From apart from me you can do nothing. If you separate yourself from the true vine, the branches will do nothing. Okay, so the question says here, what are the effects of one misquoted scripture? And if you've ever spoken to anyone of a different faith, they're going to go right to here and they're going to say, Jesus is that vine and all of us were the branches. So what power does that give them? That just everybody's what? Everybody's all right. Okay? And fast forward a couple of chapters, and Mike and his wife, they're vacationing on Christmas vacation, and they're at his, I believe it's his, I think it's his parents' house, and they're talking, and he's just going around and polling, very eclectic group, some Pentecostals, some Methodists, I think there was a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints thrown in there, and it was just kind of just a potluck, I guess, of different religions. And so they're going around and he's just asking, just honestly wanting to know what is this and what is this. And his conclusion was everybody there thought, well, there's one place that we're getting, and there's a lot of different ways to get there, but as long as we're trying to get to that one place, everything's okay. All right? The problem with that is if you're not on that vine, can you bear fruit? No, I just said that. So how do you know if the part that you are, the branch you are, how do you know if you're hooked up to the true vine? Well, you've got to follow what that true vine says in His Word. And so if you're not part of that true vine, part of Christ's church that He began, that was began the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2, you're not part of that vine. Okay, you're not going to bear fruit. And we'll get, they get into that later on when Mr. Randall explains that to Mr. Mike. Okay, Randall was now, this is where we're going to spend the most of our lesson tonight. Randall was now a spiritual fountain for Mike. Well, wouldn't that be awesome for people to say, they're just a spiritual fountain? I don't know if my middle schoolers would describe me as that in my day-to-day teaching with them. A spiritual fountain for Mike. Name 3 Christian traits found in the Bible that that Randall demonstrated that helped establish him as Mike's go-to guy for spiritual answers. Discuss the power of these principles. We've been doing this throughout the whole study. But just a few things. What's something that stood out to you in Randall's dealings with Mike and just Randall's, just his personality, his being?
Well, he was like Bereans. Randall had to search the scriptures on his own to be able to answer these questions. He had to be a student before he could be a teacher.
But was he still studying? I mean, he's continuing to study. You don't really hear him say, even at one point, he doesn't try to cram him full. He keeps him coming back for more. Open your Bibles to 1 Peter chapter 3. There are two traits that 1 Peter 3:15 is going to teach us that we're going to draw our application for tonight's lesson. And this is a verse that has been on the note cards. This is a verse that I hope that we are familiar with. Chapter 3, verse 15. Honor Christ the Lord in your hearts, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason of the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect. Now, that last part of the verse there, some translations don't include that, but that's where we're going to draw tonight's lesson from. Okay, 3 points that I want us to remember. All right, the 3 things that I'm going to answer number 3 with, and you can answer it however you want to, open for discussion. But the first thing, he was always prepared. Okay, now understand this, church. Understand that always being prepared. It would be awesome if every time someone had a Bible question, we had a Bible answer. And that's what this verse teaches you, okay? Mind you, we need to be ready to give an answer, okay? But when someone comes to you with a question and you don't have the answer to it, don't make something up, okay? Now, sometimes you can probably Google it and find an answer, but that doesn't mean it's an accurate answer. You might be able to find a Bible verse about it, okay? But what this is here is be prepared in your mind to maybe not give an answer, but to be open with them, and don't be afraid to say, can I get back to you on that? And Randall, he's able to do that with Mr. Mike, and they have a good relationship because he's open with that. All right. So number 1, be prepared. All right. Be prepared with the Bible. If it's not the Bible, be prepared mentally for these occasions. All right. The next 2 ones we're going to spend most of the time on. All right. So it says, ask, and this verse sums up Randall just to a T. What is it about Randall that's so different? What is it about Randall that he doesn't really, he has the personality, right? He has the charisma. He has the work ethic, but yet he's over here, he doesn't even have his own office. He just has this desk kind of in the corner. So what is it about Randall that he's not working up the corporate ladder, kind of stepping on whoever he's got to step on to climb the ladder? What is it about him that whatever state he's in, he's content? What is it about him that's different? So that people can come to him and say, what is the hope that you have? Why is it that you live like you do? And then you're able to give them the answer. How do you give them the answer? How do you explain it to them with these two characteristics? Gentleness and respect. Okay, the word gentleness here is a mildness of disposition. We're not rubbing it in people's faces. Okay, it's a gentleness or a meekness. The King James and American Standard will define it as meekness. I did find one translation that was a little different. This is the American Standard 1901 is what I use mainly to study with. The World English Bible is a translation that was based on the American Standard, and then, stay with me, based on the World English, you have the Hebrew Names version that I just discovered this week that I was pretty excited about. Okay, the Hebrew Names version uses, I had to Google it for it. What is that? I'm making sure it's a real Bible. It uses the word humility. And this is the only time this Greek word is translated as humility in the New Testament, in this version. Okay? So, and I started thinking about meekness. And when I think about meekness, there is, other than my dad, there's one person that comes to mind in the Old Testament. Can you guess this here? He didn't want to be the front man. He wanted Aaron to come with him. At times, Moses was one of the meekest people in the Old Testament. Okay? But when he needed to be a leader, could he be a leader? Well, sure. Okay, so it's not so much of the rubbing it in your face, it's that mildness, gentleness of spirit. Okay, so that's the first characteristic. This is the same word that's used in Matthew chapter 5, blessed are the meek. And then again, Matthew chapter 11, Jesus says, take my yoke upon you, for I am gentle, I am lowly in spirit. Okay, so that's what other reason do we need other than Jesus was gentle? Okay, and the next word that's used is respect. What other, that's at the just tail end of verse 15. Any other translations, a different word there for respect? Gentleness or meekness and reverence. That's reverence is New American Standard, uses reverence. Anybody got King James or New King James? Fear. That's it. With fear. That's what the Greek word is. It's phobos, like the phobia of something. Okay? Whatever million phobias there are out there. I think there's one for everything now. But phobos, it's dread or terror. And I started thinking about that, and I'm thinking, all right, respect and fear. What does that have to do with people other than the principal at school? You're supposed to fear them, most people fear them, and they respect them because of that. And so I started thinking, there is a fear involved in giving people an answer. And I thought, well, we don't need to be scared to give people an answer, but you have the responsibility to give them an answer, don't you? And we need to respect the fact that who is it that's going to give them an answer if they have a question? Is God just going to zap them and they're going to do the Mr. Mike method of studying the Bible where he lays it on its spine and he just lets it open and that's automatically going to give them an answer? No, it's our job. We're to present them with an answer, okay? And there should be a level of fear there in that we need to be studying, and that's the whole point of this class is to give us some confidence and to give us some know-how into how to do this, okay? Be ready. The message, which is a paraphrase again, I'm not saying use this in your daily Bible study, but every now and then it has a good spin on things, I guess. Again, it's just someone reading it and then what it means to them. And this is what it says. Be ready to speak up and tell anyone who asks why you're living the way you are, and always with the utmost courtesy. And I thought, and that nailed it, because Randall, if he's nothing, he's courteous of Mr. Mine. Okay, on to the next one there. I think this is the last. Yes?
Ephesians 4:15, I always like to just keep that in my head, speaking the truth in love. You can't just leave it. And some of us remember being around some people when we were children.
Tough word.
The idea that, oh, they're just walking around, they knew everything. And, you know, we even knew that as children. But we also knew men and women who were older than us in the church who spoke the truth in love. And you can tell the difference. Even if you haven't in the college before they
Good word is approachable. You know, being able to be approachable to somebody, to where people feel like they can come to you. You're not intimidated, but yet you feel like you have an obligation. Right? He's approachable. He's easy to talk to, but Mike feels like Randall is not necessarily an authoritative person, but that Randall feels like he has an obligation to share, instead of just out of concern.
Absolutely, that word approachable. And the more that you read about Randall, the more you're like, man, he just seems like a neat guy, just a guy that you would like to be around. And you know, sometimes if you're the boss at work, or if you have this and you have people working under you, there's a line there that you have to draw. But approachable is a very good word, because sometimes you might be in an authoritative position over someone, but still be able to talk with them about this. And I know in some jobs it gets dicey with that, but just to be to where people understand that you're a Christian, and when you go and talk to them about it, they're not going to be, oh, you are a Christian? You're telling me what so-and-so says about you, you actually go to church? That they should have that attitude, okay? They should already know that. But I think we can all probably remember a situation when you figured out that about someone and you had the same thoughts. Okay, question number 4. Why did Mike remind himself, don't drink the Kool-Aid? Because he was thinking, what if it is cold? Okay? And so he was, I guess, erring on the side of safety, maybe remembering what, was it Kurt? It's kind of the guy in the office, and Kurt's like, hey man, they're a bunch of, fanatics. Don't hang out with them, don't drink the Kool-Aid. And so, and again, that was the People's Temple, and there were hundreds that drank the Kool-Aid that was laced with poison. Yeah, Jim Jones, James Jones. Yeah, thousands. And they were all following that cult. Very, very excitable people, a lot of people with charisma, and they just got excited about it. Not a lot of truth, not a lot of meat in that teaching, just a lot of feelings, and led to that. Got excited about that. Okay, chapter 11. Salt and pepper comment, which didn't work out too well. Action points, work on memorization. Consider experiences in your life when you have seen a Christian react to negative situations in ways contrary to Christ's teachings, found in Matthew chapter 5, verse 44, that says, but I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. And that's what happens. Basically, after talking, there were 2 or 3 points, main points that Mr. Mike got from talking with the Lutheran Reverend, and he said that, well, what about John 3:16? The Christians, the Church of Christ, they never want to talk about that, and also talking about John chapter 15. So you go to them, and you go with that, and with the talking about a cult, and see what they have to say about that. So that's what happens. So first thing, and guys, we talked about this before, if you'll plant that seed, if you'll do something, God will start watering it. God's going to work on that, and you keep praying for that person, and good things are going to happen. And so, Mr. Mike's excited about it. He's ready to go. First thing he does when he walks into the office is he is looking for Randall. And he goes and he makes a beeline right for Randall. Maybe it was Randall was out one day and he couldn't wait till the next day or something like that. But anyway, makes a beeline for Randall, and he's like, hey, let's talk. You got a second? And they ended up having some meetings in the morning, but they got together at lunch. Okay? And then at lunch, there's an altercation, and somebody makes a comment about them, and that's the title of the chapter. And the very end of the chapter says something about, he could just see it, if Randall wouldn't have, kind of said, hey, take it easy on the Tennessee, and, on the front page of the Tennessee, and brawl in diner over Bible study or something like that. And he said, that's probably not the publicity that Randall would have wanted. So Randall calmly handles it and acts like it's no big deal. But Mr. Mike, he takes some offense to it big time. And maybe that's happened in your own life. Maybe you've, flown off the handle before and not had, that attitude of humility and, bless them that persecute you. And is it easy to do that? Was it easy for, let's just talk about it. Was it easy for Jesus to do that? Does anybody have more of a reason to not bless those that persecute them than Jesus? Did anyone have a holier mission, a better mission than he had? Was anyone given a tougher time than him? And so if he was able to do it, and again, remember, he was human. He had the same temptation. The difference was he had more power. And so maybe even harder for him than for us, because 10,000 angels, more than 10,000 angels, at the snap of a finger. You know, he could have just taken care of that. But, you know, he doesn't. So, I don't know, harder, easier for him. But anyways, you know, in all points, Scripture teaches in all points he was tempted like a man, but remained sinless. And so chapter 11 goes on and talks about that. We'll pick up probably chapter 11 or 12 next week. Thank you for your attention. Keep reading the book. It's great. If you don't have a copy of that, let us know now. You can get your money. Thank you.
Good. How you doing?